Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in to episode 3 of A Couple with a Driving Instructor, where we're joined by Andrew Love, who's been an ADI for many, many years and is happy to share his opinions and thoughts on the proposed or speculated paper mile taxation. So, we're going to have a couple of key takeaways from our chat, mainly the paper mile scheme replacing road tax and fuel duty. About 35 billion annually. They're trying to recover. We talk about the different types of technology that might be used to track this. We discuss a little bit about privacy concerns. Main one being how this might affect people in different ways, certain groups being affected more than others, and how it affects us as driving instructors. And we discuss and begin to discuss possibly different business models for driving instructors and driving schools to implement to offset this cost.
Becky and Andrew, thanks for joining us tonight. And the theme of this evening's chat is talking about the proposed and speculated new road tax coming in. So, Andrew, I appreciate you joining us. If you want to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself and why you're here, really.
I'm Andrew. I've been in ADI for about 20 years, and I'm here because Scott asked me to
be. Perfect excuse.
Voice of reason.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And I'm sure most people in our group and viewers of our podcast know who Becky, but for the new ones.
Hello, I'm Becky Seaton. I am a driving instructor and I'm also a trainer, empathetic instructor training.
Fantastic. And I love that you're wearing the purple today. Is it purple? I'm colourblind, so I'm guessing.
Purple, yeah, purple.
Perfect. So, Andrew, the first thing is, what is this? What is this paper mile? What does it mean to you?
So, for me, I think it's a more even distributed way of maintaining the roads and putting stuff in to reduce pollution. One of the biggest killers on our roads that nobody talks about is air pollution. And around about 7,500 people each year die in the UK because of complications with air pollution. We're working at it by trying to remove ICE vehicles, internal combustion engine vehicles. Effectively, what that means is the government is going to be losing two sources of income, because I drive. We've got a couple of EVs in our family, so we don't currently pay road tax.
So was that just to digress slightly? Your choice of going to EV, was that based on your understanding of health implications, or to play devil's advocate, was it initial high cost of this vehicle, but actually you're saving on these taxes?
So I'm doing it, Scott, to save the planet. I'm doing it to save the planet, but it's saving me about $3,500 a year, mate.
Okay.
Sorry, but if you look at it as well, I recognise, that we cannot continue doing what we're doing. We have got to find different ways of living at this standard. And one of them is we've got to reduce the reliance on fossil fuels.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm doing my bit, but primarily it was a business decision.
So it almost feels like is it being forced now? Because I know if I was to replace one of my fleet's vehicles and I was to pop into, a well-known Japanese brand, that if I wanted to get a manual vehicle, it's near on impossible.
Yeah.
So I've got to buy a hybrid, or I've got to buy an EV.
Yeah. very definitely. And so this goes back just a little bit. So EVs were around in the 1900s. There was an EV around in 1900. So
I know my local milkman. He's been riding around in an electric vehicle for years.
That's right. Yeah. So, but what's changed? What I don't understand is if you pick up your phone. So I'm 60 in January. When my old man was a copper in a village, okay, there were 3 phones in that village, and Dad had one because he was a copper. Yeah.
Right.
Now, if you think about the phones, we've got them. I run my business off my phone. So technology, I mean, what are we doing today? A Zoom meeting. Yeah. You're in Dartford. You're in Sheffield, Becky. I'm in Kettering. Yeah. Technology has grown, but for some reason, we've not wanted to get rid of a clutch.
But I hear your point. But is there not a bigger agenda? Because you and I could go onto Google and type in search, and we could read from various different sources, different opinions, backed by different statistics. And of course, you don't need me to say that we can interpret statistics and data however we really want to, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, technology is evolving, but there's always an agenda, a purpose for it, right?
Mm. Yeah.
Now, you say it's for cleaner air, but I don't see a bubble around the UK.
I agree, and this is so part of me. Okay, the UK, the emissions that we produce are minimal compared with the places like China, America, and things like that. But what we do know is at the moment there is a change in the climate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm not clever enough to say that is directly as a result of emissions and things like that. I can only think about what's happened over my lifetime. Yeah, and when I was young, last century, we used to get snow on a regular basis. Yeah, we used to get frost in September. Yeah. Now something has changed, and you can see by the weather over the last. Look what's happened in the continent this year. Look what's happened in the UK over the last couple of days. There is something going on. Now, with that, for me, what can I do to reduce that? Because I can't control what other people do, but I can control what I do.
Absolutely.
And from a business point of view, I took the decision 4 years ago that I would go to an EV because there's a green agenda out there. Okay. I could, my strap line at that point was, I'm teaching in tomorrow's technology today. Yeah. My emissions, if you exclude the battery side of it, is a lot lower. We use a lot less brake dust in an EV because we don't use the brakes as much because you use the regen. Mm-hmm. So the only thing that's really increased a little bit is the tyre dust, and tyre dust and brake dust are big contributors to air pollution. But of course, the emissions from an ICE vehicle increase that even more. And I don't know if you remember the time when we were all told to go to diesels because that would be more environmentally friendly.
Well, that's an interesting point because tonight's conversation is about tax, and if we cast back 15 years, when let's buy diesel vehicles, and were people bothered about pollution back then? Were they bothered as much? Was the majority? Was it an agenda? Was it highly spoken about? I'm not so sure, but what I do know is it's £20, it's £30, it's free tax.
Yeah.
But
So
I remember that conversation. So
yeah.
if you can cast your mind back to then, what vehicle did you buy and on what basis, and how much of your decision was affected by the cost of the road tax?
So it wasn't the road tax at that point. It was the fact. So when I first got a diesel for teaching in, and this is over 20 years ago, this was all based on the price of diesel.
Okay.
Yeah. So diesel was a lot lower. I think when I looked at my accounts, it was 76 pence a litre.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I made the decision purely on financial implications to my business. And actually, this is really good because it takes us back to my point about the pay per mile. This is all about business decisions. Now, I'm fortunate at the moment.
Sorry,
because
just a button. When you say it's a business decision, because I'm just going to go back over what you've said. A lot of your decisions, yes, you've factored in slightly about the environment, and you've agreed that something needs to give. And what you're saying is, listen, we can't change the world as individuals, but I can change what I do, and perhaps in my locale. And collectively, the more and more people do that, we have that. I want to use the phrase almost like a herd immunity, like this herd mentality. And that could grow across nation upon nation, and eventually would make a huge impact. Right? Is that where we're going with? But the bottom line is these decisions need to be made on an individual basis, and I think the problem is with bringing in a new tax, and is it fair to say none of us really like that word? We start going in deeper, and where's that money being spent, etc. Is it actually creating a rare? I don't know. So your decisions are based on how it affects your pocket first before the bigger picture. Is that what we're saying?
That's shattering my illusion of being a green person, doesn't it? And a responsible adult. Thank you, Scott. That's really good. But so let's have a look at some of these costs. Okay, so road pricing is already here. Okay.
Yes.
So if we think about the amount of tax that is taken from petrol and diesel, the RSC did some research, and they it was 5.3 pence a litre. So the more litres that you use, the more you're paying in fuel duty. And so the only thing that's steady with that is road tax. Yeah. So we effectively we've got that. We have got things.
So 5.3
pence. Let me just. I've got it here because I knew you'd ask me to here. So this is from the clarification on the RAC's position. Yeah, the fuel duty is 53 pence a litre. Okay. And they are saying that the car does about 40 miles to the gallon. So it's about 5.36 pence per mile on fuel duty. Yeah. Now, so that's just one bit. If you now factor in things like the toll, the Dartford Tunnel, the M6 toll, low emission zones, so vehicles over a certain emissions will be taxed. Congestion zones, we are being taxed with this anyway. It's just hidden. So,
is it hidden, or do we psychologically see those costs in a different way? Is it portrayed in a way that doesn't make it feel like it's taxed?
That could well be the case, couldn't it? But it could be perception. It could be perception on that. Yeah, very definitely. But if we look at the vehicle tax and the fuel duty, the government raise about £35 billion a year, and of that, only 20% goes onto roads. Now,
Okay.
what we did notice.
Sorry, Andrew, just on that
Yeah.
point, because you've raised a number that I wanted to sort of talk about, is currently something I read in the Sunday Times. They mentioned the same figure, 35 billion annual revenue.
Yeah.
That's combined fuel and road taxes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. As I understand it. Yeah.
Now, the switch to EVs. What's happened? What's changed? Is that the accelerator to a change in how we tax? Is it?
Yes, it is. I think it is because EVs. So I charge my EV at home. It is going to be quite a challenge to get 20% or what did I say, 56% tax on the power. Yeah, and it will be a lot cheaper. So, for example, I've got a solar array. So if I wanted to, I could charge my car when it's sunny, and it's always sunny in Kettering. So I could charge it for free. You don't have to laugh that much.
Well, I'm a northerner. It's raining all the time here, so make me jealous of your weather.
So it will be very difficult to do that. They could do it at public charges because they know how much, and I think there's 20% VAT on that. I'd have to double check that.
But they're independent. Most of those are independent businesses offering that service, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So how would that work?
So what, collecting as well? It would just be the same as petrol stations, won't it? They're independent. If you think about it, they're supplying a fuel. The fuel is a liquid fuel as opposed to a current. Yeah. So they're still supplying those, aren't they?
But when you get your electricity bill through, how much tax are you paying on
that? It's 5% VAT, isn't it?
Well, that's what.
Yeah, it's 5% from at home. It's 5% VAT. I think on the public charges it's 20%.
And but, is that because we're now not paying for a necessity?
Yes. Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. So with this, okay, with the pay per mile. So there's a couple of things here. We've got to do something about congestion on roads. So one of my other hats is I work within companies to reduce their road risk.
Right.
And when I was at ROSPA, I did a lot of stuff around occupational road risk and reducing that. The most dangerous thing we do in our lives is drive. So my message was stop people driving, then you'll reduce your risk. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But that's not possible because we have got to be transported, and we haven't got a very good public transport system. So one of the things that all governments want to do is reduce pollution, but that does include reducing the number of car journeys. So there's a lot of journeys within less than a mile from school, but what's not taken into account is the mother or the father drops the kid off at the school, then drives to work, and they wouldn't be able to do that if they walked to work. So we've got to reduce the number of journeys that we are using.
So just to pause you there, I take your point on board, and I feel like I know you quite well, Andrew, and I'm with the things that you've said. There's lots more factors involved, and I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and there's lots of people in lots of different scenarios, and you mentioned one there about the school journeys. So I'm going to move on to disproportionate.
Yeah,
and disproportionately affecting different people. But I just want to bring Becky in here and get maybe your thoughts, or to throw any ideas, but from your perspective, from your life, how this is going to affect you. We've thrown some big numbers about. I mean, 35 billion. That's a large number, isn't it? And when we think about our worlds as an individual, that sort of figure probably never even crosses our mind. Or maybe it does in a dream, I don't know. What would we do with that sum of money? What does that number mean to you, Becky?
Not much. Okay.
It's too big, right?
So I feel like I'm probably coming at this pay per mile tax thing in a completely different point of view. Maybe a little bit unaware of all of it. I messaged Scott today and I said, just tell me what this actually is, please, because it goes over my head. The numbers, the figures, I'm a mum, I've got 3 kids, my life is really, really busy. I'm so super aware that individually and collectively, we need to do what we can to help the planet. Absolutely, of course we do. The other side of it, the business side of it, if you take out what I do, take out my job, take out that I know a little bit about what we're talking about, it wouldn't mean anything to me. It just doesn't register with me. For me, I need my car, I need to take the kids to school, and then I need to go to work. And that's kind of where I think a lot of people just use their car. They don't really think about the bigger picture sometimes. From what I know, the limited knowledge I know of pay per mile, it's that you have to pay per mile, as it says on the tin. And that's going to stop people from being able to do what they normally do, achieve things, travel, go and see families, because they're not going to be able to afford it.
So for you, regardless of what changes with road tax, it's a cost that you're just going to have to accept and find that money. I mean, obviously, we work in an industry where we need to travel. We're going to need to use the roads. So for you, it's a case of, well, listen, it's a tax for the road. I'm just going to have to pay it. And you're absolutely right there. What Andrew was saying is it we're trying to get less people on the road? Is it we're trying to stop moving people around in vehicles? And you're saying the same thing. And is it? Well, we're going to move on to that, and I think potentially from I mean, nobody's got any absolute knowledge on this because nothing's been really released, has it? This is all speculation, educated guessing.
Yeah, there was a government report, Road Pricing Committee.
February.
That was the 4th report, 2021-2022. I think there's been another couple. So there are. There was
one in February and one in July.
Yeah.
But they didn't release any more information.
No. So they have been looking at this. Now, I think there's going to be a change in the way we feel about journeys. Yeah. So, when there's been recessions, there's been a massive drop in miles driven. Where the recession and where the fuel price is really high, there's been a massive drop in road miles. And one of the things that people do need to be very mindful of is getting active. So if there's a reduction in the use of miles through something like this, we will see more people taking walks, for example, or cycling or things like that, which has a knock-on effect to the NHS. So in 2005, 2006, they did a Get Britain Active campaign with the NHS to reduce disease, heart disease, that sort of stuff. And it worked hand in hand with the road safety people. But it was discovered that actually trying to get people out to walk and cycle and on horses and things like that, they were concerned about vehicles not giving enough respect to these people. So it wasn't as effective. So what we've got to try and do is find a way of reducing the miles. And
that's an interesting point, because
Yeah.
I don't want to digress too much,
Mhm.
but I don't know about you. I've certainly noticed certainly since the pandemic,
Mm.
the driver behaviour on the road has changed.
It's shocking.
Yeah.
Absolutely shocking.
But I put this to you: has yours not changed? Being around that,
I would hope not. What I did notice was, because I was spent a lot less time driving during the pandemic, my skills faded a bit, and that might what be because that's effectively in England we were locked down. England, Wales, we were locked down for 3-4 months, nearly 5 months, weren't we? In Scotland, it was a lot longer.
so that's an interesting point, and I agree. I think
Mhm.
mine certainly did as well. I mean, I was quite active on the roads during the pandemic, but certainly less for my profession. So
Only within 5 miles of your home, of course.
so I worked with South East Coast Ambulance Service, and
Oh, right, okay.
so I was working with the ambulances
Yeah.
during that period. So I was on the road quite a lot.
Mhm.
But you're absolutely right. So if us as professionals, our skills potentially might have got slightly rusty, however we want,
Mhm. Yeah, skills fade.
then
Yeah.
the public, or those not in a driving or teaching
Mhm.
position, could that have diminished even further?
Yeah, I think if I look at this, the tolerance level is a lot lower. Um, and people aren't really, they're just focusing on what they've got to do. And that could be for a number of reasons. I mean, the
Yeah.
pandemic was, a lot of people were looked after, but there are a lot of people that weren't.
Absolutely.
And so it could be economically, it could be that we've just forgotten how to socialize. So there's lots of things. And what I don't want to do is take away from the point about the pricing, because I actually feel as businesses, we haven't got anything to fear from this, because ultimately,
let's get onto that in a minute.
Yeah.
Hold that thought. So talking about this moves us quite nicely onto public reaction and maybe concerns. Yeah. So we've talked about maybe there's been a fade, as you said, in skills. So our behavior, our thought process, intolerance, understanding. I know certainly for me, when I'm on the road, I have to sort of allow myself extra time and think, okay, that I'm not surprised by that piece of driving, because it's becoming more regular. So now we're introducing a new road tax, potentially. We're changing something. Already I've seen in the public forum mixed reactions. And of course, I guess that makes sense, because there's nothing actually official. We're just hearing that noise. So something is going to change. So these debates are starting to be created, and which is what we're doing here, isn't it? So paying per mile, I put it to you, and again, this is I'm just looking for an opinion, your thoughts, and of course from your circle. Could it disproportionately affect different demographics, different people, especially those who rely heavily on their vehicle for transportation?
So here we have a lot more EVs about now. I drive.
When you say here, do you mean locally to you?
In the country, in the country, there's a lot more EVs than there were when I got one 4 years ago. When I first got one 4 years ago, and I want to pay more money to ensure the roads. Yeah. So as an EV driver, I just leave all that stuff to you guys in the ICE vehicles. Yeah, I'm happy for you to pay that road tax. I'm happy for you to pay that fuel duty. Yeah, but actually, I think that I should be contributing.
But are you now happy to pay the extra that they've lost because you've not been paying road tax?
Yeah, I am, because I don't. I want the burden to be shared. I wanted to take it all from you two and pass it
So kind of.
partly to me. Yeah, but I should be. I should be. If we want to, if we if if we don't want potholes, if we want roads to be of a certain standard, we have to be able to pass that fairly across all of the road users.
And
Yeah.
I agree with. Sorry, go on.
And Andrew, do you think everyone that has an EV that has brought it to save money, do you think they would feel the same as you, that they would now be willing to share that cost, or do you think they would be like, nope, this is the reason why I brought this, is to save money? Do you think everyone would have the same opinion as you, or are you going to get people go, not a chance?
Well, I know that there'll be a lot of people that will just want to save money. Yeah, it's very apparent that people just want to, don't really, that unless they're truly affected by something, they're not going to take a lot of notice of it. Yeah. So
I'm guilty of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, for example, global warming. Okay, and I'm not putting the arguing for or against, but in my early years, nobody talked about. Well, there were a few people that talked about global warming, but now if you look at the Pacific Islands that are in danger, and Bangladesh and those places that are in danger of losing hundreds and thousands of acres of land, and in fact, some of them being completely submerged, they are now paying more attention to it. Yeah.
Because the problem is now.
That's right. So, and coming back to your point, Scott, and a lot of people make this point, but we're only a very small part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're only a very small part of it. But does that mean we shouldn't do it?
I completely agree, Andrew.
Yeah,
and I'll talk on that point. Is you mentioned Bangladesh. The problem is happening.
Yeah,
and it's very, very real. Is what we're saying here is, okay, there's a road tax coming in. There's lots of reasons for it. Yes, potholes covered.
Yeah,
better road network, better infrastructure. That money's got to come from somewhere. But there's also a global warming issue to deal with that could and will affect our country. Maybe it's not happening right now in terms of the effect that it's so bad where we're losing thousands of acres of crops. But listen, if we look across over there, that's potentially what's going to happen.
Also, with this as well, you think about the rain that's here. Now, I started my life off in the meat industry, so I used to listen to Farming Today every day, because that was important to me. Now, if you look what's happened this year with farming, it's been very wet spring. It's been a very wet winter. It's now becoming a very wet autumn. The farmers have got to grow some food. If we haven't got the land, if they can't sow the crops,
it's wasted, right?
It's wasted, and also, where are we going to get the food from?
Absolutely.
So this pay-per mile thing, as a business, we've got to look at, but we've also got to talk to people. And this goes back to my time at Rosper, where I was encouraging people to make alternative choices. and we're talking over Zoom now, aren't we? So this sort of stuff now is this saves us from driving and getting together. There are some restrictions on that, of course, but what we have got to do as a country is reduce the number of miles that we travel in cars in a single metal body, box.
Yeah. Well, looking at the conference that's happening this Sunday. There's 9 of us going collectively, and not just because of emissions and fuel and car, the cost saving by putting us all in one vehicle is pretty good.
No, you're not. You're just doing it because you like singing.
No,
and
they haven't heard it yet. They haven't heard it yet. But putting us all together, not only, like you said, we're using Zoom now for this, so we miss that get-together. So things like this is we can make a difference by getting together, having that camaraderie, that actually being in the same room. We're reducing the miles on the road, all of those different things you mentioned. So you're right, there are things that we can do that make a huge difference. We've just taken vehicles off the road for one day. Which I think is massive. And I love the point that you're making here is that there is a bigger agenda, probably bigger agenda than I could possibly even imagine or comprehend. But my little bit is part of that puzzle that improves things. Yeah. And I think that's certainly a good way to look at things. But I think my point in the disproportionality of it is those people that are less fortunate, those people that are just making ends meet, how do we think? Do we think that the government is going to support these, make an exception?
So when Graham Feast was talking about this about 12 months ago, and he was suggesting there may be a first couple of 1,000 miles free.
Okay.
Yeah.
That covers your school runs, your shop.
Yeah.
But that's not really fair. Sorry to butt in, but if you've got 2 families who are on the same very limited income and have similar difficulties, maybe mental health challenges, who rely on family connections to help with lots of things, and one family's extended family is an hour away and the other one is 3 hours away, that first 2,000 miles free, that one's going to run out sooner than that one, but yet they're both in a position where they might need to reach people for support. And I wonder how that could affect people. That's
interesting. I mean, that's an interesting concept, actually. And just thinking about what you said there is buy 2 vehicles. I've got 2 allowances, but that doesn't.
But not all families can afford that.
That doesn't fix the problem, does it? Yeah.
No. So I think whenever we introduce stuff, there will be some people that are treated more fairly than others. And there's always going to be winners and losers. I think with road pricing, by paying per mile, it might make us more aware of what we're actually doing and how many miles we're actually driving.
So awareness,
awareness, yeah. And I think that's got to be. I think that's got to be a good thing.
Which is no different to. I mean, a couple of years ago, budgeting was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Everybody's personal budgeting and spending. So you're right. That could be factored in there and go. Actually, was that trip to the harvester absolutely necessary in 3 cars, or could that be shared? This week, do you want to pick everyone up, or know? I think there's certainly ways around it. But Becky's point there, I think, is valid. That some people are going to really lose, and some people are going to really win.
Yeah. So for me, if you look at it purely and simply with me, Okay, my family, because I've got an EV and my wife's got an EV. We're not paying road tax. We're not paying fuel duty. In fact, my wife does 2,500 miles a year. So her when her car's fully charged, it's 161 miles. It takes 3 weeks to drive that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you look at it that way, we are not we're not paying our way,
No.
and something needs to be changed.
When you renew those vehicles,
Mm.
how much of an effect do you expect? And I appreciate we don't have what they're going to do here,
Mhm.
but how much do you think that's going to affect you? And I'm not meaning, oh, it's going to make me, living on the breadline, but just what difference is it going to make?
What if they change to pay per mile?
Yeah.
Well, for Jackie, it won't make a lot of difference because 2,000 miles is not a lot, really. For me,
So she could still win here. So if she's within her allowance, actually,
Yeah,
she continues to pay nothing.
yeah. If there is an allowance,
Sure.
yeah. But 2,000 miles, if it's 5 pence a mile, yeah, that's not a lot, is it?
No.
Yeah. So, but me as a business, so I'm doing about 22,500 miles each year. Okay. The way when I looked at my business costs, I broke it down and I worked out that for when I'm with learners or drivers, new drivers, Becky, just so I don't get
New drivers,
everybody confused. Yeah. So when I'm with learners, okay, I work out on average, including getting there and back, it's about 25 miles an hour. Yeah. So part of my cost, when I look at my costs, it's what is it? How much does it cost? What's the implication for the fuel cost? So, and what's the implication for the cost of the vehicle and the maintenance and things like that? And so, when I was in an ICE vehicle teaching, and the prices went up to 140, 150 pence, I put a fuel supplement in, and I said, look, if it goes to this price, it'll go up by 50 pence. If it goes to this price, it'll go. Okay, so I was, and those prices were beyond my control, and I did it from one of the compare sites with the fuel prices, so everybody could see it, and everybody was happy to pay that extra because I'd made it quite clear. So I think when we're running businesses, we need to identify what our costs are, and it might make us more effective about the way we do business.
It's interesting because by putting out 50p, you're not
Yeah.
actually getting an extra 50p, are you?
50 pence an hour.
So that 50 pence per hour,
Yeah,
you factor it in as a cost, but
that's it.
But to the public, I put it to you that this person's getting an extra 50p an hour, an extra £1 an hour out of me. But to paint that picture, you factored in, as you've just said and explained, that
Yeah,
I factored in this new fuel cost, but also I've got to pay tax on that income too.
yeah, that's right. So yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So that's how I worked it out. But we might become more smart about how we do business.
So
rather than
hold
them go
that
to
thought.
us.
We
Yeah.
will get there.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I love that. Just want to very quickly, both of you can give me some thoughts here, what's your thoughts on options to track your mileage? What do you think they're thinking of?
Right. Okay. The amount of data that you can get for a car from the car these days is huge. It's probably all already tracked. If you speak to any collision investigators, the amount of data that they can get. We've also, so my car is linked to the internet. Okay, so it downloads stuff automatically and things like that. So if they want it, they've already got this information. I think one of the ways that we will see this come in is we will have devices in there that can link to other organizations. Maybe it might be insurance companies, maybe that sort of thing. It might be a requirement that you have to give data or ensure your mileage is collected automatically.
That's that's going to throw up some arms, isn't it, about collecting this data? The whole Big Brother. But I mean, you could log on to your Google account and it tracks where you go, right? How often do we put that in?
And your phone does.
Yeah.
So and
for
the
me,
car does anyway.
Normal. Right.
The car does anyway.
Absolutely.
I mean, if you look at the ANPR cameras, we've got so many ANPR cameras. Your journey will be tracked anyway.
Absolutely, I agree. But there's gonna throw up, it's gonna throw up a debate, isn't it? One thing that I perhaps considered was MOTs, and somebody said to me, that people will get around that. But I think that sort of thought, I think there's always people going to try and circumvent anything.
Yeah, that's right. So MOTs will only be for vehicles for 3 years, and it wasn't too long ago that they were suggesting that it was going to be for 4 years.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
there's lots of what you're saying is there's lots of avenues where if data isn't quite accurately submitted, there's a paper trail along the way to back this up.
Yeah, the vehicles the technology in vehicles today, it wouldn't take much. Yeah. And anybody says, "Oh, we don't like being tracked," they know how fast you're going. They know where you've been. Yeah. If you look at the amount of data you can get from a vehicle, sat nav journeys, that sort of stuff. Yeah.
So, Becky, did you want to add anything to that?
I have a little petrol manual Corsa. I love my little car. I'm not ready for an EV. I'm not ready for all the fancy gadgets. I like that it doesn't even have an electric handbrake. I like my little car. And if I were to try and track my mileage, I would do it in my phone, or I would get a little book and I would write it down. That would be my way. All the ways you've just said, Andrew. It's just way over for me. So
here, okay, there are apps that insurance companies give that on the phones, that will track your driving. Yeah. So,
but what if you leave your phone at home?
Okay. So therefore, there will be adjustment needed to be made. But the technology that we have today should be able to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the black boxes for insurance, especially for youngsters, and my twins had them as well.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite sophisticated, and trying to circumvent that by leaving your phone at home. If there's a pattern, that the questions are asked. So
So there's loads of ways, and it'll be a VHS or Betamax, won't it? I mean, we're already seeing that with EVs with the charging. So we've got CCS and CHAdeMO, and CHAdeMO's losing out. So that's the Nissan one. So to CCS charging. So it'll be exactly the same. My biggest thing about this is it's going to be a fairer system particularly for those people who are driving ICE vehicles currently. I'm not paying anything, and is that right? Well,
but your car would have cost a lot more money than what my little petrol manual Corsa would have.
Yeah, but Becky, I'm saving $3,500 a year just on fuel.
Yeah,
granted.
Just on fuel.
I think Becky's point there is valid, because my opinion is that the savings on tax were a nice little bonus.
Yeah,
people that could afford an EV vehicle. And those people that could afford EV vehicles had a choice.
Yeah.
It wasn't, for me, the average earner, it wasn't really viable. So I could see why people got a little bit disgruntled that, these people get these flash new cars, all the technology, EV, and they get to save money. So I can kind of get that thought process, but I also get the bigger picture. And of course, as technology advances and time goes on, those costs are going to come down. So talking about costs then, there's speculation in the public forums and some of the industry-specific websites that, now I don't know how true this source is, but let's use their figure as an example, that the average UK motorist under this new scheme could roughly cost them around 450 quid a year.
Yeah.
Which is, would you agree, considerably more?
It depends. If you remove the road tax and if you remove the fuel duty, then because they couldn't introduce pay per mile and keep the fuel duty and keep the road tax. So if you think about it that way, then actually it's probably going to be cost neutral.
So, but what if they're still taxing on the petrol and diesels?
So on the fuel, you mean?
Yeah.
That won't happen. You'd have to have a really unpopular government that would do stupid things like remove the winter fuel allowance to even contemplate that, or even take some have some clothes donated for their wives, for example. You'd have to have a stupid government that would do that.
Okay.
That would never happen, would it?
Listen, I try and stay politically neutral. I don't know is the answer. I don't know. I'd hope not. But could you just expand on what you meant by this 450? Again, it's a made up figure.
Yeah,
really, because there's no foundation from this figure. How does that become? For me, that hasn't got a clue. How is that neutral? How can I look at the figure and tell me it's not more than what I'm currently paying?
So if I can only go back to when I was fueling a car. So it was about $4,500 a year that I was putting in fuel. Okay, and I was doing about 27,000 miles. Okay, so 56% of that was tax. So if we say it's 50, so we're saying about £2,225 in tax. Yeah. So there's a lot of money. And the road tax as well on top of that. Okay. So if we say £2,500, so that's, if you do that at 5 pence a mile, sorry, if you do 26,000 at 5 pence a mile or whatever, there's a lot to play for. What it will become, and it might be, it'll become a more visible cost. And that's where we might get the change to reduce the number of miles in the car, because if people are seeing that cost, they are likely to do something about it.
So what you're saying,
be forced to take accountability for the mileage that they use.
Yeah.
That's a good way of putting it. That's what I was going to touch on there. Is more awareness of the journeys we're making.
Yeah,
and we're more aware of that we're going to pay for that when we start the engine.
That's right. And the worst thing of all, smug EV driver face. I won't be able to do that anymore, will I?
No.
Because I'll be paying it as well.
But for us in our industry, we're probably more aware of our mileage, and like you said, if we are crunching our numbers and we're number savvy, we're going to be thinking about that. Right, I'm just going to come out of the call quickly because I'm aware that we've done an hour, but I did want to cover a bit more in the environmental stuff, but then I wanted to go on and speak more about how, as driving schools, driving instructors, you went to talk on centralisation, which is something I really want to talk about. Do you guys want to do a part 2?
Yeah, I'm happy to do a part 2.
Sounds great.